All right, picture this. The self-crowned queen of the HOA thinks she can waltz into my house with a so-called master key. Absurd, right? What she didn't see coming was the little surprise I had up my sleeve. Her bold attempt to flex her fake authority spiraled into a drama so over the top, it could have been ripped from a zany sitcom. From ridiculous threats to a full-on public meltdown, this suburban showdown escalated into the wildest spectacle you've ever seen. Want to know how this crazy ride unfolded? Drop a comment below. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this hilarious chaos. I'm Chris Walker, 42, a mechanic by trade, and apparently the prime target of our neighborhood's most unhinged HOA president. My security alert pinged at exactly 7:03 a.m. Motion detected at the back door. Grabbing my coffee, I pulled up the footage, bracing for a raccoon or a delivery driver, but there was Vera, crouched by my door like a sneaky suburban cat burglar, fumbling with her so-called master key. This woman genuinely believed she had the golden ticket to every house around here. Sure, the old maintenance crew handed her emergency keys years back, but every lock had been swapped out since then. No one bothered to clue Vera in that her master key was as useless as trying to start a car with a spoon. She wrestled with it one last time. Snap! The metal broke clean off, the sharp crack slicing through the morning air. Her eyes bulged in shock, then panic, before she unleashed a wild, blood-curdling shriek that sent shivers down my spine. Snap! The key shattered in my lock, and Vera's banshee wail echoed. Through the dawn air, she actually started pounding on my glass door with her fists like breaking and entering was just another HOA regulation she could enforce. That's when I grabbed my wrench from the kitchen counter, not to threaten anyone, but because holding something solid helps me think when I'm seeing red. This woman had been terrorizing our neighborhood for months with her fake authority and ridiculous fines. Just last month, she hit me with $300 because my fence was painted ivory instead of pearl white. She actually brought paint samples to prove her point. Now, she was trying to literally break into my house, and I'd had enough. The sound of pounding echoed through the house. Bang, bang, bang. Vera's voice followed sharply, demanding, "Open up. I'm conducting an emergency inspection for the HOA." Her words were laced with fury. "I know you're hiding something legal in there." When I opened the door, she was standing there with her oversized sunglasses and that entitled smirk, pointing her manicured finger at me like I was some kind of criminal. "You will let me inspect your property, or I will call 911. The threat hung in the air between us, and I could see she was absolutely serious. This woman genuinely believed she had the authority to search my home whenever she wanted. "Go ahead and call," I said, gripping my wrench tighter. "Let's see how that works out for you." Vera's expression shifted from shock to satisfaction as she pulled out her phone, dialing 911 with a smug grin, clearly savoring her power. What Vera didn't realize was that my son Leo worked as a 911 dispatcher, and he was about to turn her call into her worst nightmare. The timing was perfect, or maybe it was divine intervention. But Leo was sitting at the dispatch center that exact moment. I quickly texted him, "HOA, crazy calling now, record everything." His response was immediate. "Got you covered. Dad, 911, what's your emergency?" Leo's professional voice came through Vera's phone speaker. She immediately launched into her victim performance. "I need police immediately. There's a dangerous man in my neighborhood who's threatening me and refusing to comply with community safety regulations." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing as Leo responded with textbook dispatcher protocol. "Ma'am, can you describe the Nature of the threat. Are you in immediate physical danger? Ver was ready for this question. He's acting aggressively and interfering with my lawful duties as HOA president. He has weapons and he's blocking my access to community property. The lies were flowing so smoothly, you'd think she'd rehearsed this call. Leo wasn't your average dispatcher. He carefully guided Vera deeper into her lies with questions so sharp they trapped her in her own web of fiction. I was conducting a routine inspection. With my master key and this resident denied you entry to his private property, yes, he's clearly hiding something illegal. Every answer dug her deeper into a hole of admitted trespassing and false reporting. Leo stretched that call to 23 minutes, getting every incriminating detail on official record. By the end, Vera had essentially confessed to attempted breaking and entering while filing a false police report about me threatening her. As Vera hung up, convinced the police were rushing to arrest me, she turned to leave with this smug victory smile. "You should have just cooperated," she sneered. "Now you'll learn what happens when you mess with the HOA." That's when karma made its first appearance. She was so busy savoring her imaginary triumph that she didn't see my garbage can by the curb crash. She walked straight into it, sending trash flying everywhere and knocking her precious sunglasses right off her face. Coffee grounds splattered across her white pants, banana peel stuck to her shoes. And for the first time, I saw Vera Hayward completely stripped of her fake authority. Just a panicked middle-aged woman covered in garbage, scrambling to collect her dignity from the gutter. Leo appeared from around the corner, casually waving his phone. "Hey, Dad! Just finished the most interesting 911 call you'll never believe." What happened? The look on Vera's face when she realized who Leo was, pure horror, mixed with dawning comprehension. She went from smug victor to terrified defendant in 2 seconds flat as she fled toward her house, still picking banana peels off her outfit. I couldn't help but smile. Round 1 was over, and Vera had just discovered that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. But knowing her ego, this was just the beginning of what would become the most epic HOA war our neighborhood had ever seen. If getting caught red-handed by a 911 dispatcher and face-planting into garbage had taught Vera anything, it should have been to back down gracefully. Instead, she chose the nuclear option. The next morning, I stepped outside to find my walkway drenched in red paint, each drop a clear message of revenge. It wasn't just a messy prank. It was Ver's calculated attempt to control me with fear. It was Ver's attempt to send a message, a psychological strike, disguised as a simple prank. The feeling of escalating tension was palpable, but Vera had made one critical mistake in her midnight vandalism spree. She'd forgotten that the woman she'd been terrorizing with garden fines was about to become her worst nightmare. Rachel Brooks was already outside with her coffee when I discovered the paint disaster, and she was practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Chris, I saw everything," she whispered, glancing around like we were planning a covert operation. 3:14 a.m. She came creeping around with a paint bucket and some kind of fake security camera. Set it up on the telephone pole, dumped the paint, then practiced her shocked expression. In her car mirror for 10 minutes, Rachel had been tracking Vera's late-night visits, documenting every fine and false accusation she made about garden violations. The woman was terrified but finally ready to fight back. "There's more," Rachel continued, pulling me aside with the urgency of someone sharing state secret. Her ex-husband didn't just leave her, he cleaned out everything and disappeared with his secretary. 3 years ago, left her with massive debts and this house she can barely afford. Becoming HOA president was her way of controlling anything after losing control of her entire life. The psychology was crystal clear. Now Vera wasn't just power-hungry, she was desperately trying to rebuild her shattered sense of authority. By terrorizing everyone around her, she specifically hates your family because you represent everything she lost: stability, happiness, a loving relationship with your son. But Rachel had brought more than just psychological insights I've been planning.
This, for weeks, Chris. Every fine, every harassment, every illegal thing she's done, I've been documenting it all. And tonight, at the community gathering, we're going to end her reign of terror once and for all. She pulled out a portable projector and
A tablet loaded with evidence I didn't even know existed. My teaching career taught me how to present information effectively, and Vera is about to get the lesson of her lifetime. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let Vera perform her fake shock and outrage about the paint vandalism, then publicly expose her as the perpetrator in front of the entire neighborhood. 6 p.m. at the community park, and the monthly potluck was in full swing. Families with casserole dishes, folding chairs, and the usual small-town gossip. Except tonight's gossip was about to become legendary. Vera arrived fashionably late, wearing fresh sunglasses and practicing her award-winning victim performance. "Oh my heavens, Chris," she gasped loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "What happened to your beautiful walkway? This vandalism is exactly why we need stricter security measures in our community." She was really laying it on thick, suggesting I was probably responsible for other recent incidents and calling for enhanced enforcement protocols. Several neighbors were actually buying her act, starting to look at me with suspicion, which made my blood pressure spike dangerously. But Rachel was already in position, having quietly set up the projector behind a picnic table while Vera was performing her one-woman show. "You know, Vera," I said, standing up with my laptop, "I completely agree about the vandalism problem. In fact, I have some footage that everyone should see." The portable screen lit up with crystal clearer security footage, and suddenly 40-something neighbors were watching their HOA president's 3-AM paint dumping performance. In high definition, the silence was deafening pin-drop as everyone watched Vera deliberately vandalizing my property, setting up fake cameras and practicing her innocent act in her car mirror. The timestamp clearly showed premeditation, and her rehearsed expressions looked absolutely ridiculous when played back for an audience. Leo, who timed his arrival perfectly, was discreetly recording Vera's reaction while she cycled through 12 different shades of panic and rage. "This is completely fake," she shrieked, pointing at the screen like she could delete the evidence through sheer willpower. "He's manipulating you all with doctored surveillance footage." But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. Mrs. Peterson stood up and started slow clapping. "Bravo, Vera. Finally we see your true community spirit." Others joined in with their own Vera horror stories. $50 fines for mailbox flowers, citations for unauthorized holiday decorations, threats over fence heights that were perfectly legal. People were pulling out phones, recording the footage, sharing it in real time to social media. Vera's reputation was being destroyed and broadcast simultaneously, her tyrannical reign ending in spectacular public humiliation. As laughter and angry shouting filled the park, Vera stood there looking like a woman who just realized she'd picked a fight with the entire neighborhood at once. Her perfectly styled authority was melting away, replaced by the desperate panic of someone whose lies had finally caught up with them. "I am still your HOA president," she screamed over the crowd. "I demand respect, but respect once shattered
is impossible to rebuild with shouting.
As phones kept recording and neighbors kept sharing their stories, Vera's last shred of credibility died in front of 40 witnesses in counting. The woman who'd ruled through fear and fake authority was about to discover that the internet has a very long memory. Humiliation at the community gathering should have been Vera's wake-up call to retreat gracefully. Instead, it triggered something desperate and dangerous in her psychology. 3 days later, I woke up to every parent's nightmare. Security. System offline flashing across my phone screen. Not weather damage or technical failure, deliberate sabotage. Someone had systematically cut the cables to all 3 exterior cameras during the night, but in her rage-fueled vandalism spree, Vera had made a catastrophic error that would expose her most damaging crime. Yet, the community bulletin board lay smashed on the grass, clearly wrecked by someone losing control. Posts, snapped papers, scattered everywhere like urban tumbleweeds, and clear evidence of impact damage that could only come from someone losing control. During their sabotage mission, I was photographing the damage when Rachel appeared, wringing her hands and looking terrified. Chris, she came to my house last night around on DP.
Em asking to borrow my ladder and wire cutters, said she needed to document safety violations. I was half asleep and just handed them over, but now I realize she gestured at the destruction around us. There's more, Rachel whispered, glancing around.
Nervously, she's been telling people you're the one vandalizing neighborhood property, called an emergency HOA meeting for tonight to have you removed from the community for destructive behavior. She's trying to frame you for her own crimes. The psychological projection was stunning. Vera was so deep in her delusion that she genuinely believed she could pin her midnight vandalism on me, but she'd made one crucial mistake in her desperate sabotage mission. My security system wasn't just exterior cameras. I had a backup camera hidden inside my garage with a perfect view of the street, and it had recorded everything in crystal clear 4K resolution. The footage was incredible. Vera at 11:47 p. creeping around with Rachel's ladder and wire cutters, systematically destroying my security system. Then came the best part, her 20-minute struggle with the community bulletin board. She'd been trying to vandalize it, to frame me, but the heavy structure was too much for her. When it finally crashed down, the look of panic on her face was priceless. She'd accidentally destroyed the one piece of community property that everyone actually cared about. By noon, half the neighborhood had seen the backup footage, thanks to Leo's strategic sharing with a few key residents. That's when the real drama began. I was in my garage when shouting erupted from the street. Vera, surrounded by 8 angry neighbors next to the fallen bulletin board, still trying to blame me for the destruction. Mrs. Perry was holding up her phone with the security footage playing. Explain this, Vera. Explain why we're watching you destroy community property. Other neighbors were chiming in with their own complaints. Mr. Rodriguez's $50 fine for parking violations, the Johnson family citation for Halloween decorations, Mrs. Patterson's mailbox flower harassment. But Vera wasn't done digging her own grave. This is all fake, she shrieked, her voice cracking under pressure. He's manipulating everyone with doctored footage. I'm trying to protect this community from a dangerous man. The more she protested, the more unhinged she sounded. Her perfectly styled hair was falling apart, her sunglasses were crooked, and there was a wild desperation in her eyes that suggested she was about to make everything 10 times worse for herself. Leo appeared with his phone, recording the entire confrontation as Vera's lies collapsed in real time. That's when Vera pulled out her phone and started dialing. Those three familiar numbers. "Fine!" she screamed at the growing crowd. "If you won't listen to reason, the police will sort this out." For the second time in a week, Vera Hayward was calling 911, and once again she had absolutely no idea who would be answering her call. But this time, Leo wasn't just ready, he was waiting. As Vera held her phone to her ear, convinced she was about to turn the tables on me, Leo was already jogging back to his car to head to the dispatch center. Early, round 2 was about to begin, and Vera was walking straight into the same trap that had destroyed her credibility the first time. As Vera dialed 911 again, I felt a cold satisfaction wash over me. This time she had no idea who was waiting on the other end. This woman had just sealed her own fate, and she didn't even know it. The crowd of neighbors stepped back as Vera held her phone to her ear, waiting for someone to answer her emergency call. What she didn't realize was that Leo had just finished his lunch break and was heading back to the dispatch center for his afternoon shift. I caught his eye and nodded slightly. It was showtime. Again, Leo jogged back to his car, pretending to leave for school, while actually heading to work early. The timing was perfect. He'd be at his desk within 10 minutes, ready to take whatever wild story Vera was about to spin. I stayed with the crowd, watching Vera pace back and forth next to the fallen bulletin board, muttering under her breath while waiting for her call to be answered. Her desperation was palpable. She'd been caught red-handed by multiple neighbors. Her lies were falling apart, and her only remaining strategy was to double down on Fiction 911. "What's your emergency?" Leo's professional voice came through Vera's phone speaker loud enough for several of us to hear. Vera immediately launched into hysterics. "Officer, I need immediate assistance. There's a man in my neighborhood who has been harassing and threatening me for weeks. He's destroyed community property and is now intimidating me in front of witnesses." I had to admire Leo's composure as he responded with textbook dispatcher professionalism. "Ma'am, I need you to slow down and give me specific details. Are you in immediate physical danger?" Vera's performance would have won her an award for overacting. "Yes, he's been following me, vandalizing my property, and he just destroyed our community bulletin board. He's standing right here with a crowd of people, and I'm afraid for my safety." The neighbors around me were exchanging glances of disbelief. We were all witnesses to what had actually happened, and Vera's version of events bore no resemblance to reality. Leo kept her on the line with strategic questions that forced Vera to elaborate on her fictional narrative. "Ma'am, you mentioned vandalism. Can you describe the specific damages you've witnessed this person causing?" That's when Vera really went off the rails. "He's been painting graffiti on sidewalks, cutting down HOA signs, and destroying security cameras. I have evidence of everything." Each lie made her sound more desperate and less credible. "But," Leo continued, "gathering information with patient professionalism, and you said you're afraid for your safety. Has this person made any direct threats towards you?" Vera didn't hesitate. "He threatened to have me arrested for doing my job as HOA president," he said. "He had connections in law enforcement who would frame me for crimes." The irony was staggering. She was accusing me of exactly what she'd been trying to do to me. Leo's voice remained perfectly neutral. "I see, and where exactly are you located right now?" As Vera gave her address and continued spinning her web of lies, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Officer Jason Parker was pulling up to the curb in his patrol car, responding to Vera's call. Jason was actually one of Leo's friends from high school. They'd played on the same football team and stayed in touch over the years, but even with that connection, I knew Jason would have to follow protocol and investigate Vere's claims professionally. He stepped out of his cruiser, looked around at the scene, the fallen bulletin board, the crowd of neighbors, and Vera still on her phone with dispatch, and I could see him putting the pieces together. "Mum, I'm going to need you to end your call with dispatch," Jason said firmly. "I'm Officer Parker, and I'm here to investigate your complaint." Vere hung up triumphantly and immediately pointed at me. "That's him. That's the man who's been terrorizing our community." Jason walked over to me with a slight nod, professional acknowledgement, not friendship. "Sir, I need to ask you some questions about allegations of property damage and threatening behavior." I cooperated fully, explaining my side of the story, while Jason took notes. The whole time Vera was hovering nearby, adding her own commentary. "Don't believe anything he says. He's a manipulative liar who's been planning this whole thing. But Jason was a good cop, and good cops follow evidence, not emotions, ma'am. I need you to step back and let me conduct this investigation properly." When I mentioned the security footage of Vera cutting my camera cables and knocking over the bulletin board, Jason's eyebrows went up. "Have video evidence of the property damage being committed?" I nodded and showed him the footage on my phone. His expression remained neutral, but I could see the wheels turning as he watched Vere's midnight sabotage mission play out in high definition. That's when Vera made her biggest mistake yet. She was so focused on convincing Jason that I was the villain that she didn't notice Leo had returned and was standing at the edge of the crowd recording everything on his phone when Jason asked Vera direct questions about her whereabouts the previous night. She started contradicting herself. "I was home all evening, officer. I would never be out at that hour doing whatever he's claiming I did." But when Jason showed her the timestamp on my security footage, her story began to crumble. Or maybe I was checking on community property. That's my job as HOA president. Jason's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Ma'am, this footage shows you cutting cables and knocking over community property. That's vandalism and destruction of property." Vere's response was to grab for Leo's phone, demanding he stop recording. "You can't film me without permission. This is harassment." The sudden lunge for his phone caused her to lose her balance and stumble backward into the same decorative bush she'd landed in during her first 911 call. This time, Leo got it all on video. Vera falling into the bushes, her sunglasses flying off, leaves in her hair, and that look of absolute panic when she realized she'd been caught in multiple lies in front of a police officer. The crowd of neighbors couldn't hold back their laughter anymore. Here was their tyrannical HOA president, the woman who'd been terrorizing them with fines and threats, lying in a bush covered in twigs and completely exposed as a fraud. Jason helped her to her feet, but his expression had shifted from professional neutrality to barely contained irritation. "Ma'am, based on the evidence I've seen here today, it appears you filed a false police report. That's a misdemeanor offense." Vere's face went white as she realized the tables had completely turned. But I'm the victim here. He's the one who... Jason cut her off. "Ma'am, I have video evidence of you committing vandalism, witness statements from multiple neighbors contradicting your story, and now footage of you attempting to interfere with documentation of this incident. I strongly suggest you contact a lawyer." As Jason walked back to his car to file his report, Vera stood there among the neighbors she'd been bullying for months, covered in leaves and completely defeated. Leo walked over to me with a huge grin. "Dad, this footage is going to be legendary. Should I save it for the next community meeting, or do you think the neighborhood would enjoy seeing it sooner?" I looked at Vera, still picking twigs out of her hair, and smiled. "Oh, I think we can find a much better use for that video, but first, let's see what other tricks our HOA president has up her sleeve." After her spectacular bush diving performance in front of Officer Parker, you'd think Vera would finally understand that she was outmatched. Instead, she seemed to interpret her humiliation as a declaration of war. The next morning, I found a certified letter in my mailbox, the kind that requires a signature and means serious business. The return address showed Vera's name and some fancy law firm letterhead that looked expensive, and intimidating inside was a cease and desist letter demanding I stop harassing her, followed by a threat to sue me for defamation, emotional distress, and property damage unless I paid her $15,000 within 2 weeks. The letter was full of legal jargon, designed to scare me into submission, claiming that my malicious campaign of videotaping and public humiliation had caused her severe psychological trauma and reputational damage. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. The woman who'd been terrorizing an entire neighborhood was now claiming to be the victim of harassment. But the legal threat wasn't what made my blood boil. It was the final paragraph that crossed every line. Furthermore, if payment is not received, legal action will be taken against both you and your son for conspiracy to commit fraud and abuse of emergency services. She was threatening Leo, now trying to drag my 19-year-old kid into her delusional revenge fantasy, and stood in my kitchen gripping that letter so tight it crumpled in my hands, feeling that familiar cold rage building behind my eyes. This woman had just made the biggest mistake of her life by threatening my son. I was about to slam my wrench down on the counter when Leah walked in, took one look at my face, and immediately understood the situation. "Dad, whatever's in that letter, don't let her get to you. We've got bigger problems to worry about." He was holding a manila envelope and wearing the kind of expression that suggested he'd discovered something important. Rachel had uncovered something crucial. As a retired teacher with time on her hands, she dove into Vera's shady finances and discovered more than we could have imagined. "Chris, I've been thinking about Vera's behavior lately. The desperate need for control, the increasingly erratic decisions, the way she talks about her neighborhood like she owns it." So I did some digging through public records and HOA financial statements. She opened the envelope and pulled out bank statements, receipts, and financial documents that painted a disturbing picture. "Look at this. 3 months ago, Vera authorized a community improvement purchase for $2,000 from the HOA emergency fund. The receipt shows it was for a deluxe massage chair from some high-end furniture store." The implications hit me immediately. Vera had been stealing from the community fund to buy herself luxury items while hitting residents with fines for the most trivial violations. "There's more," Rachel continued, her voice shaking slightly. "She's been skimming money for months. Fake maintenance costs, imaginary legal fees, even charging the HOA for her personal dry cleaning as professional wardrobe expenses. The financial records were damning, but Rachel had also uncovered something even more interesting. Yesterday, after her encounter with Officer Parker, Vera was at the community park making threatening phone calls. I was walking my dog and overheard her on the phone with someone saying things like,
"I need you to make this problem disappear."
"And I don't care what it costs, just make sure he can't cause any more trouble." Rachel was genuinely scared, now convinced that Vera was planning something more serious than legal threats. Chris, I think she's hiring someone to intimidate you, or worse. The way she was talking, it didn't sound like she meant lawyers, but Leo had been listening to the whole conversation. With growing excitement rather than concern, Dad Rachel. I think you're missing the big picture here. Vera just handed us everything we need to completely destroy her credibility and remove her as HOA president. But more importantly, she doesn't know we have this information yet. That afternoon, while Vera was presumably plotting my downfall, Leo was putting together what he called the final presentation. He'd been quietly documenting every one of Vera's illegal and unethical actions, from the fake master key attempts to the vandalism, false police reports, and now embezzlement. Dad, check this out, I found where she keeps her massage chair. He showed me photos he'd taken while walking through the neighborhood. They're clearly visible in Vera's backyard through her inadequate privacy. Fence was a massive leather massage chair that probably cost more than most
People's cars. The arrogance was staggering, but it was also perfect evidence of her corruption. But Leo had saved the best discovery for last. Remember how she threatened us with that lawyer letter? Well, I did some checking, and that law firm doesn't
exist. The letterhead is fake. The address is a mailbox store and the phone number goes to a disconnected voicemail. Vera had been so desperate to intimidate us that she'd resorted to creating fictional legal threats. She's not just corrupt, Dad, she's completely delusional. And tomorrow she's planning to call another emergency HOA meeting to formally expel us from the community. She sent notices to every house this morning. Leo pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my heart skip
a beat. But here's the thing, I've been live streaming some of our encounters with her, and the videos are going viral. We've got thousands of people following this story, now waiting to see what happens next. The idea that our neighborhood drama had
attracted an audience of strangers was both thrilling and terrifying. That evening, as Vera sat in her stolen massage chair, probably planning her next move against us, Leo and I were preparing for what would be the final confrontation. Dad, tomorrow's
meeting is going to be epic. I've got all the evidence ready, the embezzlement records, photos of the massage chair, documentation of every false report.
She's filed and video of all her illegal activities, but more importantly, I've got something special planned that's going to make sure she never bothers anyone in this neighborhood again. I looked at my son, this brilliant young man who'd inherited his mother's sense of justice and apparently my stubborn streak, and felt a surge of pride mixed with anticipation. Leo, whatever you're planning, just make sure it's legal and ethical. We're not going to sink to her level. He grinned and nodded toward Vera's house, where we could see her silhouette through the window, probably counting the money she thought she was about to extort from us. Don't worry, Dad. By this time tomorrow, Vera Hayward is going to wish she'd never heard the name Walker, and the best part, she's going to do most of the work herself. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community center, and by 6:45 the parking lot was fuller than I'd ever seen it. Word had spread throughout the neighborhood about Vera's latest schemes, and it seemed like everyone wanted a front row seat for what promised to be the final showdown. Leo and I arrived with a laptop bag full of evidence and a portable projector that Rachel had helped us set up earlier, but the real surprise was the crowd. Not just our neighbors, but people I didn't recognize, all holding phones and cameras. "Dad," Leo whispered as we walked toward the building. I might have mentioned this meeting in my last live stream. We've got about 3,000 people watching online right now. The idea that thousands of strangers were about to witness Vera's downfall added an extra layer of satisfaction to the evening. Vera had clearly spent considerable time preparing for what she believed would be her moment of triumph. She'd set up a formal presentation area with charts and graphs showing my alleged violations, printed copies of her fake legal threats, and even a posterized photo of the fallen bulletin board with dramatic red arrows pointing to the damage. The woman had even prepared a formal agenda titled Community Safety Meeting Removal of Disruptive Resident. But when Officer Parker walked into the meeting carrying a manila folder and wearing his official uniform, Vera's confident smile faltered slightly. "Officer Parker, thank you for coming to support my presentation," she said, clearly assuming he was there to back up her story. Jason's response was professional but ominous. "Actually, ma'am, I'm here in an official capacity regarding several ongoing investigations." Vera began her presentation with all the theatrical flair of a prosecutor, making a closing argument. "Fellow residents, we are here tonight to address a serious threat to our community's safety and property values. Chris Walker has engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment, vandalism, and intimidation that cannot be tolerated. In our neighborhood," she clicked through her slideshow, showing photos of paint on my walkway, the fallen bulletin board, and my damaged security camera. Each image was accompanied by dramatic narration about my alleged crimes. "This man has destroyed community property, filed false reports against me, and recruited his son to abuse emergency services for personal vendetta." The neighbors who knew the truth were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, while the few residents who'd only heard Vera's version of events looked genuinely concerned. It was a masterful performance of projection and manipulation. But when Vera clicked to her evidence slide, showing the blurry photos that supposedly depicted me vandalizing property, Leo stood up and connected our laptop to the main projector. "Mrs. Hayward, since we're sharing evidence tonight, I think everyone should see the complete picture." The screen suddenly filled with crystal-clear security footage of Vera's midnight cable-cutting adventure, time-stamped and in full color. The room fell completely silent as 40-plus neighbors watched their HOA president committing the exact crimes she just accused me of. "This is fake!" Vera shrieked, lunging toward the projector like she could somehow stop the truth from playing. "He's doctored this footage to frame me," but Leo was ready for that objection. "Actually, Mrs. Hayward, Officer Parker has already verified the authenticity of this footage as part of his investigation." Jason nodded gravely and opened his manila folder. "That's correct. We've also received additional evidence regarding financial irregularities in the HOA accounts." That's when Rachel stood up, holding the financial documents. "We discovered, Vera, I think you need to explain this $2,000 community improvement purchase to everyone." She held up the receipt for the massage chair, and Leo immediately switched the projection to a photo of Vera's backyard, showing the luxury chair in all its stolen glory. The gasps from the audience were audible as neighbors realized their HOA fees had been funding Vera's personal comfort, while she'd been finding them for trivial violations. That's not what it looks like." Vera was panicking, now her composed presentation persona completely shattered. "I purchased that chair for community use. It's available for any resident who requests access." The lie was so transparent that several neighbors actually laughed out loud. Mrs. Perry called out from the back, "Really, Vera? Then why is it locked in your private backyard behind a 6-foot fence?" But Leo had saved the best revelation for last. Ladies and gentlemen, I have one more thing to share with you about Mrs. Hayward's dedication to truth and legal procedures. He switched the projection to show Vera's threatening letter with the fake law firm letterhead. "This cease and desist letter was sent to my father yesterday, threatening legal action from a law firm that doesn't actually exist. The address is fake. The phone number is disconnected and the legal threats are completely fabricated. The room erupted in angry murmurs as neighbors realized the extent of Vera's deception. She'd been ruling through fear and intimidation using fake authority and invented consequences to control everyone around her. Furthermore, Leo continued, Mrs. Hayward has filed multiple false police reports.
As Officer Parker can confirm.
Jason stepped forward with his own evidence folder. Mrs. Hayward, you're currently under investigation for filing false reports, vandalism, and possible embezzlement of community funds. I strongly advise you to contact legitimate legal representation. The transformation in Vera was both dramatic and pathetic. The confident, authoritative woman who'd entered the meeting was now a cornered, desperate person whose lies were collapsing in real time. "You're all conspiring against me," she screamed, pointing wildly at the crowd. This is a setup, they've been planning this for weeks. But her protests only made her sound more unhinged. Leo's live stream was capturing everything, broadcasting Vera's meltdown to thousands of viewers who were commenting in real time with words like karma and justice served. When Mrs. Patterson stood up and called for an immediate vote of no confidence in Vera's leadership, hands shot up throughout the room. The vote was unanimous, 37-0, with Vera herself being the only person not raising her hand, as neighbors began discussing criminal charges and civil lawsuits. Vera made one final desperate attempt to salvage her authority. She lunged toward the exit, shouting, "This isn't over, I'll be back with real lawyers and real evidence." But her dramatic exit was ruined when she tripped over the extension cord for the projector, sending her sprawling across the floor in front of 40 witnesses and 3,000 online viewers as Vera scrambled to her feet and fled the community center. The remaining neighbors broke into spontaneous applause. Leo's live stream chat was exploding with celebration emojis and comments about justice being served. Officer Parker approached me with something that looked almost like a smile, Mr. Walker. I have to say, in 10 years of police work, I've never seen someone so thoroughly expose their own crimes while trying to frame someone else. He handed me a business card. You'll need to file a formal complaint about the harassment and false reports. But based on what I've seen tonight, I don't think Mrs. Hayward will be bothering your family anymore. As we packed up our evidence and prepared to head home, Rachel came over and hugged both Leo and me. "Sarah would be so proud of you both," she said, tears in her eyes. "You didn't just defend yourselves, you saved this entire neighborhood from that woman's tyranny." But as we walked to our car, Leo was already thinking ahead. "Dad, I don't think Vera is going to accept defeat gracefully. We should be prepared for one more desperate move." He was right. Of course, cornered animals are always the most dangerous. The morning after the disastrous HOA meeting, I expected Vera to either disappear quietly or launch some kind of desperate counterattack. What I didn't expect was to wake up to my doorbell ringing at 6 day.
And find Officer Parker on my doorstep with a warrant and a very serious expression, Mr. Walker. "I need to search your property for stolen HOA funds and community property." My heart dropped into my stomach until I saw the slight wink he gave me.
As he handed over the paper, the warrant was real, but it wasn't for my house. It was for Vera's. Mrs. Hayward filed a complaint claiming you'd stolen community funds and hidden stolen property on your premises, since she insisted on a thorough investigation.
I figured we might as well investigate everyone involved. The brilliant part of Jason's strategy became clear as we walked toward Vera's house. She demanded police action against me, not realizing that her own financial crimes would be exposed in
The process. Vera's house was surrounded by police cars, and I could see her through the front window, frantically trying to move boxes and furniture around. The stolen massage chair was still prominently displayed in her backyard, but now it was evidence in a criminal investigation rather than just neighborhood gossip. Leo appeared at my side, phone in hand, and streaming everything live to what he told me was now over 10,000 viewers. "Dad, you have to see this," he whispered, showing me his phone screen. The comment section was going crazy with people from all over the country following our neighborhood drama. Someone had created hashtags, others were sharing their own HOA horror stories, and a surprising number of viewers were asking for updates on Vera's arrest. "This is bigger than just our neighborhood now. Dad, Vera has become a symbol of everything people hate about power-hungry HOA presidents." When the search warrant execution began, it was like watching a house of cards collapse in real time. Police found evidence of embezzlement going back 2 years. Fake invoices, forged signatures, and a secret bank account where Vera had been depositing community fees for her personal use. The massage chair was just the tip of the iceberg. They discovered a home theater system designer furniture and even a hot tub that had all been purchased with HOA funds. But the most damning evidence was Vera's own record-keeping. She'd been meticulous about documenting her thefts, apparently. Believing she was too smart to ever get caught, Officer Parker emerged from the house carrying boxes of financial records and what looked like a detailed plan for removing undesirable residents from the neighborhood. "Mr. Walker, it appears Mrs. Hayward had quite extensive plans for dealing with you and your family. We found detailed notes about filing false reports, creating fake evidence, and even hiring someone to intimidate you." The crowd of neighbors that had gathered to watch the search was getting larger by the minute, and Leo's live stream was attracting viewers from around the world. That's when inspiration struck for what would become the legendary finale to our HOA war. Leo, remember how Vera always talked about community standards and maintaining property values? I think it's time we show the community exactly what kind of standards she's been maintaining. While police continued their search, Leo and I set up a more elaborate streaming setup in the park across from Vera's house. He'd been recording Vera's various meltdowns and confrontations over the past few weeks, and now he compiled them into what he called the Vera Hayward experience, a highlight reel of her most outrageous moments set to upbeat music that made her look like a cartoon villain. The video montage was a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. It started with Vera's failed attempt to use her fake master key, showed her paint-dumping adventure, included her multiple falls into bushes and garbage. Cans captured her screaming matches with neighbors and concluded with her spectacular exit from the HOA meeting. Leo had even added subtitle commentary like "Vera discovers physics when she tripped over the extension cord," and the moment Vera realized she wasn't the main character when she saw herself on the security footage, the live stream audience was loving it, sharing the video faster than we could track. Within an hour, HOA Karen Gets Owned was trending on multiple social media platforms, and Vera Hayward had become an internet meme. But the real coup de grace came when the police escorted Vera out of her house in handcuffs. She was being arrested for embezzlement, filing false reports, and harassment. But her concern wasn't the criminal charges. It was the crowd of neighbors and online audience witnessing her downfall. "Turn off those cameras," she screamed as Leo's live stream captured her perp walk. "You can't film me without permission. This is harassment." The irony was perfect. The woman who'd been terrorizing everyone with fake authority was now being arrested while complaining about her own rights being violated. As the police car drove away with Vera in the back seat, the neighborhood erupted in celebration. People were cheering, taking selfies, and sharing their own stories about Vera's reign of terror. Mrs. Perry brought out a bottle of champagne and someone started playing music from a portable speaker. The aftermath was swift and satisfying. Within a week, Vera had been formally charged with multiple felonies, removed from her position as HOA president, and forced to put her house up for sale to pay legal fees and restitution. The massage chair and other stolen items were repossessed and sold, with the proceeds returned to the community fund. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was Vera's transformation into an internet celebrity for all the wrong reasons. Leo's compilation video had been viewed millions of times, spawning reaction videos, remixes, and countless memes. Vera Hayward had become the poster child for whole video abuse of power, and her face was now associated with entitled behavior around the world. She'd achieved the fame and recognition she'd always craved, just not in the way she'd intended. 3 months later, Leo and I were sitting on our front porch, watching the sunset and reflecting on our victory over suburban tyranny. The new HOA president was a reasonable person who focused on actual community improvement rather than petty power trips. Property values had actually increased since Vera's departure, and the neighborhood had returned to the peaceful community we'd originally hoped to find. Leo had parlayed his viral video success into a part-time social media consulting business, helping other people document and expose HOA abuse. Dad, he said, scrolling through the latest comments on his Vera compilation video. Someone just shared this in Australia. Apparently our HOA drama has gone international. I laughed and shook my head. Your mother would have gotten such a kick out of this whole situation. She always said that the best way to defeat a bully is to let them defeat themselves, sitting in silence. I spotted Vera's car creeping past our house, her face twisted in hatred, knowing she'd lost everything. Leo noticed her too and casually waved. Think she learned her lesson? He asked. I smiled and took a sip of my beer. Probably not, but at least now everyone knows exactly who she really is.